Gigabyte have improved their budget gaming laptop option this year with the new G6X, and it fixes a number of problems that I had with last year's G5. But there are still some pretty big issues that we need to discuss. The G6X has a grey metallic lid and black plastic interior. There's some flex to the plastic interior if you're pushing on it, but it felt alright using it normally. Lid flex was pretty normal, and the lid was easy enough to open up, but I've got a problem with the hinges. The actual motion of opening the lid feels nice and smooth, but you can see the plastic near the keyboard flexing as the screen goes back. I'm not even putting any pressure on the lid at this point. I'm just moving it back and forward normally, but you can see the keyboard moving. This doesn't inspire confidence, and it's difficult to say how well that will last long term. It does a good job of hiding fingerprints, and the marks that do show up are easy to clean with a microfiber cloth. The width and depth are pretty similar to most other 16-inch gaming laptops, but the G6X is definitely on the thicker side. The laptop alone weighs just over 5.5 pounds or 2.5 kilos, increasing to almost 7 pounds or 3 kilos with a fairly small 180 watt charger included. So not as heavy as Lenovo's Lock 16, but a bit more weighty compared to what I'd consider to be its competition. My configuration has Intel's Core i7-13650HX processor, Nvidia RTX 4060 graphics, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 16-inch 165Hz screen. There's also an RTX 4050 option for less money. You can see all the options with the link below. The keyboard has a single zone of RGB backlighting, and all keys and secondary functions get lit up. You can turn the lighting on or off by holding function and pressing the asterisk key, or you can change the brightness between 4 levels with the plus and minus keys. The / key is a shortcut to the lighting software found in Gigabyte's control center. You only get 15 pre-selected colors to choose from, and you can set how much idle time it takes for the lighting to turn off or disable it. The keyboard has 1.5mm of key travel, and it feels okay to type with. The presses are a little mushy, but it's not too terrible. The plastic touchpad clicks down anywhere and works well. Pressing the power button briefly, what I'd consider normal, doesn't work. You have to hold it down for a second or so for it to turn on. As for ports, the left side has a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A port and 3.5mm audio combo jack, with the Kensington lock right at the back. The right side has a faster USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A and Type C port, while the back has Gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 2.1, power input, and a second USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port. At least there's no ancient USB 2.0 like last year's Gigabyte G5. But I suppose that did at least have a dedicated mini DisplayPort and micro SD card slot, which the G6X does not have. The Type-C port on the right can be used to charge the laptop with up to 100 watts, but unfortunately that one does not have DisplayPort support. The Type-C port on the back does have DisplayPort 1.4 support though, so you can connect a screen to that one, but it connects via the Intel integrated graphics when Optimus is on, and if you turn Optimus off, then you just don't get any display output from it. But HDMI always connects to the Nvidia graphics, and it could run our LG B9 TV at 4K 120Hz 12-bit with G-Sync. Getting inside requires unscrewing 12 Phillips head screws, all the same length. It wasn't too hard to open, but I definitely needed pry tools. I'll leave a link to these ones I use below. Inside, we've got the battery down the front, 2 memory slots just above near the middle, 2 PCIe Gen 4 M.2 storage slots, and the Wi-Fi 6E card hiding underneath the installed SSD. The speeds from the installed 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD were decent, and Wi-Fi was similar to a number of other laptops that have the same Intel 6E Wi-Fi card. The upgradability score is good for a 16-inch laptop with no major drawbacks. Just like last year's G5, both M.2 slots can fit a double-sided SSD, but the screw for the second M.2 slot and optional thermal pad comes separately in the laptop's box. The speakers are found underneath on the left and right sides towards the front. They sound a little below average. They're just not that clear, and there's more wrist rest vibration compared to others. but there was a little bass present. The latency mon results weren't as bad as the Legion 5 last week, but still not great. The G6X is powered by a 73 watt-hour battery. The Flexi Charger section of the Control Center software lets you limit the maximum charge level between 70 and 80%, or they let you customize it, which is a nice feature that I wish most others would offer. The screen's refresh rate automatically lowers down to 60 Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. The screen flashes black as the refresh rate changes, and it automatically goes back up when you plug back in. But unlike other laptops, I couldn't see a way in software to disable it. Battery life was okay, but not impressive, lasting for 4.5 hours in the YouTube video playback test, which is similar to a number of other Intel-based gaming laptops. The big battery life gains typically come from AMD Ryzen HS models. Let's check out thermals next. The G6X has two fans inside with heat pipes shared between the CPU and GPU, and there are holes above the fans for air intake. Air gets exhausted out of the left and right sides, and out from the corners on the back. The Control Center software lets us change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are Quiet, Entertainment, and Performance. Quiet mode attempts to quit any applications running on the NVIDIA graphics to save power, but you can still use the NVIDIA graphics after. You can select different fan speed options within each performance mode below, including some customization in custom mode. The internal temps were okay when sitting there idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. The temps aren't bad at all, and are what I would consider to be cold from a laptop when under this workload. For context, 90 degrees Celsius plus on the CPU is pretty common. There's no thermal throttling in this test. There wasn't really a temperature difference in performance mode between the auto and turbo fan modes, but maximum lowered temps slightly. We can get a similar result by using the quieter auto fan profile and a cooling pad, and temperatures were barely any different if you want to close the lid and dock the laptop. Clock speeds are basically the same with the lid closed or open, so again, no issues docking the laptop. Quiet mode was barely functional with the CPU power limited so harshly it was stuck at 400 MHz. Interestingly, the cooling pad actually reduced CPU performance by about 100 MHz on the 6P cores. I'm not sure why, but we can see the CPU power lowers with the cooling pad too. The RTX 4060 graphics runs at around 100 watts with the CPU active at the same time, which is a normal result, and similar to most other full-powered 4060 laptops we've tested. But the G6X doesn't technically have a full-powered 4060. The NVIDIA control panel lists the dynamic boost power limit as 105 watts, whereas full power is 140 watts. But this shouldn't make much difference, as most laptops don't run above 100 watts in games due to NVIDIA's voltage limit anyway. I didn't have any battery drain during the test. The 180 watt charger was adequate. Here's how an actual game performs with the different performance modes. Again, quiet mode was basically useless if you want to get stuff done. I'd only use it in a meeting at work or something to keep the fans low. Otherwise, there wasn't really any difference between entertainment and performance modes. The CPU can use much more power if the GPU is idle, like in Cinebench. Performance mode with the fan speed set to maximum was a little better than auto, because thermal throttling was the limitation from preventing a higher multi-core score. That's not necessarily bad, as it means higher performance, and the G6X isn't too far off Alienware's far more expensive X16, which also has a 14-core 20-thread 13th gen processor. Not bad. It's ahead of similarly priced lower to mid-range options. A good result. But performance lowers significantly if we unplug the charger and instead run off of battery power. Single-core performance doesn't change too much, but multi-core performance suffers compared to many of those other laptops. Most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle, and the G6X was well below this and felt cool, though the fans were running. It gets warmer with the stress test running, but the middle only feels warm and not hot. And as you'll hear soon, it's still running very quietly. Entertainment mode wasn't much different. The WASD keys stay even cooler as air seems to come in through the keyboard. Performance mode wasn't really any different between the auto and maximum fan modes, as both are fairly loud. Let's have a listen. The fans were still audible in quiet mode even when sitting there idle. Fan noise gets louder in the higher performance modes, as expected. The cooling pad was able to lower fan noise slightly, but performance mode was still fairly loud. Considering performance in a game was basically the same between performance and entertainment modes, you can still get good performance without running as loud. Gigabyte have made the change to a 16:10 screen this year, which means more pixels vertically compared to last year's G5. But the screen in last year's G5 was kinda terrible. Is it actually any better this year? A little, but not much. Unfortunately, screens are just one of the first places that a brand is going to cut costs when trying to make a more budget gaming laptop option. So usually if you want a better screen, you have to spend more money. We're talking about just a 60% sRGB color gamut, which is quite poor, but technically better than the 55% in last year's G5. Yeah, you can still play games fine and have fun. The colors just don't pop like they do with better panels. 300 nits is the minimum I think is acceptable, and the G6X's screen was a bit brighter than that baseline, and a little brighter compared to last year's G5. Alienware charges way more money for their laptops, yet their screens aren't as bright. But ultimately, the G6X isn't too bad relative to other budget options. Backlight bleed wasn't great, but wasn't bad enough to notice during normal use, though this will vary between panels anyway. Screen response time wasn't great at 25 milliseconds. I'm a filthy casual, but even I start noticing blurriness in fast-paced games once we get slower than 20 milliseconds. It's a bit subjective, but I don't think it's as big of an issue in slower single-player style titles. It's one of the slowest results we've measured in the last couple of years, and actually slightly slower compared to Gigabyte's G5 last year. Other budget options are still on the slower side, but they're not as low as the G6X. The total system latency is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in Counter-Strike 2. It's the slowest result since we've moved to CS2 for testing, so yeah, not great. Especially when the Lenovo Lock with A530M nearby is available for almost half the price. The G6X has a muck switch. By default, you have to scroll over to the right in Gigabyte's Control Center software to find it. It's a little awkward, but you can drag the tile to make it a bit easier to access. Anyway, this requires a reboot to apply, as it does not have advanced Optimus. There's no G-Sync, but with Optimus on, the iGPU provides adaptive sync. There's a 720p camera above the screen, but there's no IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. Alright, so the camera quality is pretty terrible, let's be honest, but the audio doesn't sound too bad. Now let's find out how well Gigabyte's G6 performs in games. We've tested it with these settings for best results. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested with our own custom test run, and I've got the G6X shown by the red highlight. At 1080p, it's one of the lower RTX 4060 results, which I suppose is kind of expected as technically it's not a full-powered 4060. But at the same time, the other 4060s don't end up running beyond 100 watts most of the time due to Nvidia's voltage limit anyway. At least it's 10% faster compared to the lower-powered 4060 in last year's G5. We didn't bother testing that older G5 at 1440p, so the G6X is the lowest result we have from a 4060 in this game, though it's not far from those smaller 14-inch laptops. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the game's benchmark. At 1080p, the G6X was actually a little ahead of last year's Lock laptops, which are Lenovo's budget options. The G6X was almost 19% faster compared to last year's G5, despite that technically having the same GPU, as it just gets less power. So that's definitely a welcome improvement. The G6X was still ahead of the Locks at the higher 1440p resolution, but the difference isn't that big and probably won't be that noticeable when actually playing. Alienware's far more expensive M16 with RTX 4070 did really poorly in this particular game compared to other 4070s. So compared to that, the G6X is doing great. The G6X was almost 13% faster than last year's G5 in Control at 1080p. Still though, it's barely ahead of one of the best RTX 3060 gaming laptops from a couple of years ago. Not great. And one of the Lenovo Locks that was behind in the previous game was now 14% faster. So just goes to show that it varies by game too. At 1440p, the G6X's 4060 was barely ahead of the 4050 in Acer's Nitro 5, and the 3060 in the older Legion 5 was now just slightly ahead. Of course, it's absolutely not a difference you'd notice, and well within the margin of error range. My point is more the fact that a 3060 is even competing at all. Don't get me wrong, you can absolutely play modern games with good settings on the G6X and have a fun time, especially with features like DLSS or FSR. It's just that performance isn't quite as good compared to a lot of other 4060 laptops out there. But hey, at least they've boosted the GPU power compared to last year's G5. So it's definitely better than what they were offering last year. Here are the 3D Mark results with the addition of the new Steel Nomad test. As for content creation, it's about the same as 4050 laptops with lower tier CPUs in Adobe Photoshop, but close to some 4070 laptops in Adobe Premiere. Unfortunately, we don't have any other 4060 results, as we only recently swapped to newer versions of this test. DaVinci Resolve was decent though, and actually ahead of a number of other 4060 laptops. But yeah, I'd want to connect a better external screen for serious creator work. Clever laptops like this use the inside BIOS, which is easy to use but also fairly basic. There aren't a whole lot of customization options available in here, especially when compared to other budget options like Lenovo's Lock or even MSI's GF63. Linux support was tested with an Ubuntu 24.04 Live CD. By default, the keyboard, touchpad, camera, speakers, Ethernet, and Wi-Fi all worked fine. Keyboard shortcuts for changing screen brightness and volume work, but none of the keyboard brightness keys work. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the link below the video for updates and current sales. And if the G6X does have a good sale, we'll be sure to add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the latest sales, so make sure that you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. At the time of recording, the RTX 4060 configuration that we've tested here without a sale goes for $1,200 US on Amazon, or for $100 more, you can get it for 32 gigs of RAM at Best Buy, which is a bit of a weird option. Now, if I may be blunt, no one should be buying this laptop for $1,200 US. Right now on the deal site, you can get a higher tier RTX 4070 laptop for $1,200, or even less. Asus's TUF F15 here is a higher quality machine for less money and will perform better in games. Meanwhile, the Legion Slim 5 for almost the same price, granted with a nice sale, will absolutely destroy the G6X in every way imaginable. Even if we check out the 4060 deals, you'll really understand why the G6X is so overpriced. I'd say Lenovo's Lock series competes with the G6X, but they're available for hundreds of dollars less, while being a better machine in my opinion. Look, this could change if the G6X does have a good sale. It's just not on sale at the moment. So yeah, it's kind of not fair to compare full price against sale price. So again, you'll have to check out the deals link below to see what the current sales are. But yeah, the simple fact is, I don't think anyone should pay full price for this laptop. Based on those 4060 deals, I'd expect the G6X to be around $800 to maybe $850. But yeah, that's not the case yet. You might be inclined to think that the G6X isn't actually a budget gaming laptop based on its price, which is kind of fair. But I'm not basing my opinion of it being a budget laptop on the price. I'm basing it on what it's offering. This is offering budget features. That's just a fact. The only problem is it doesn't have a budget price tag to match what it's offering right now. The G6X has good cooling, the CPU performance is decent with the charger connected, and it's better in gaming compared to last year's G5 with same GPU, as they've improved the GPU power limit. But the screen is still lacking, especially for that higher price tag without a sale. I've got concerns for the hinge longevity, and yeah, it's a bit of a thick boy. There are just better options out there for that type of money, and you can find out all about them in this video next, where I've gone through my top 3 favorite budget gaming laptop options. I'll see you in that one next.